I guess not. All right. You know what? We're going to go early because that's how I roll. Now, if I can figure out how to get this thing. So I got this and I got this. And we're actually live doing this thing. Hey, guys, hanging around. I know you're waiting for this big event. All right. You ready to go? Lee, Newton, nod your head. There we go.
You got one life, for crying out loud. You might as well just give it all you got.
The Deej, Dan Jordan.
Your daily dose of reality. Your daily dose of the Deej.
I can't believe I'm saying this, but I need my daily dose of the Deej.
I make the news. I don't watch the news. I'm a leader.
The Sales Energizer, Dan Jordan.
Listen, don't worry how to sell, baby. Worry about why people buy. And it's fun.
You don't need a 5-hour energy. All you need is the Sales Energizer.
Just when I think it's not going to be as fun as the one before, each one gets successfully better. What's the word I'm looking for? What's it going to take to get you into this car today, huh?
And now, please welcome the Sales Energizer, Dan Jordan.
Boom! That's exactly it. Do that.
Well, welcome, guys. You know, I'm always, Chris Stone isn't here today, so I'm all excited. I get an opportunity to play with all this technology myself. But good news for you all. And you, by the way, we're going early here. You know why we're going early? We're going early because I want to go early. It's a whole thing. In sales, it's the whole thing. You could be, 20 minutes early and be, it's mildly annoying, but you have a little edge. Or like 30 seconds late and you've lost it. 30 seconds, you've lost the sale. You're like lost the edge. And so always be early. This is how you roll here. All right. And I wanted to be especially early because today's guest is going to do something that secretly I think everybody's wanted to do, but just they're too chicken to do it. And so sometimes you meet somebody who's able, here he is, who's able to be able to turn everybody's dreams into reality. And so here he comes. Without any further ado, my new best friend and someone who I admire without even knowing. Please help me welcome my man, Lee Newton Rhodes.
Yes, let's get started.
There you go. And you still could, after that big set, I was giving you 20 minutes to put your arms in the air, but still, people don't follow instruction. That's the issue. Do you find that? There we go. Okay.
Yeah, I did it before. I guess I was too wide. You couldn't see.
That's right.
You open up a cage and that tiger just wants to come out. It's just bouncing around, waiting for that door to open.
Dude, you look great with that flag behind you and the whole shebang. Looking strong. Well, listen, I got to ask you now where are you from? The masses would like to know. And by the way, anybody who's out there, I'm going to put this, I'm learning how to do this stuff here. Ask Lee, your next U.S. president, anything you want for people who come out there. I'll be monitoring your talk. So where do you live right now?
Right now I live in New York, in Brooklyn, New York City. But you ask where I'm from. And where I'm from is Atlanta, Georgia. And that's where my heart is. You can take the boy out of the country, but you can't take the country out of the boy. I was born in Georgia Baptist in downtown Atlanta. My mom was born in Georgia Baptist downtown Atlanta. My grandparents, all four of my grandparents on my mother's side, they're born in Atlanta. They're buried in Atlanta. My great grandparents are buried in Atlanta. Going back, they came there in a long time, over 100 years ago. When Atlanta wasn't the Atlanta it is now. Now it's popular to live in Atlanta. Before it wasn't.
That's crazy. So how did you? Because the odd thing is, I was born in Brooklyn, and I moved to Atlanta. We're the same thing. But so that's the reason why half the time when I look in the mirror, I see you. That's what it is. You got me going there. So I'm a big fan too. The only other person I've known from Atlanta is my wife. And so nobody's from here, but I like the idea that you say where you.
That is so true. People live there, but say, where are you from? I'm from Atlanta. Well, no, you're not. I don't even you've been here.
That's
you're
right.
Not really from Atlanta. But I go back over 100 years. And you know how
But
far
then,
back I go back? This is not part of the show, but since we're just talking, my grandfather came there as a little boy, and he started the first Atlanta Symphony. He was the first violinist on the first Atlanta Symphony.
really? Oh, I'm a big
My mother's father.
BFOS. Big fan of the symphony. How did so? Are you into classical music, or are you into music at all?
I'm not musical. I'm tone deaf, but my family, they got it.
Well,
Everyone else.
you may be tone deaf musically, but you're not tone deaf to the, I guess, the call of the people to bring you out to actually run for president. So,
You're very polite.
yes, but before you get into that, how does a guy from Atlanta wind up in Brooklyn and mix it up with the people there? They're two different people.
That's a real good question. I had this professor at Georgia State. As I was graduating, we were interviewing. It's the Big Eight at the time. Now it's the Big Four. And he says, if you stay here and interview for the Big Eight, it'll be here. You've been traveling a lot of small towns, what have you. Why don't you interview up in New York City? Up until then, I was never in New York. He says, why don't you interview up there, and you'll have a totally different experience. I did. And I guess, as they say, the rest is history. My wife is from New York, Queens, actually, Howard Beach. And we've been up here ever since. So while I'm from Atlanta and from Georgia, all my kids, unfortunately, I guess you could say, are from Brooklyn.
Well, they're all, people from Brooklyn aren't. Brooklyn's not New York. New York is the city.
The way I say unfortunately is because politically, what's going on now in the country,
yes,
there's totally different mindset of people from New York City and some other big cities than the rest of America. And they just don't relate to it. They don't relate to these type of people. My kids don't relate to me. So how could you think like that? Where are you from?
Your kids don't relate to you. That's interesting. Now, let me ask you: Did they all go to college?
Some did, some didn't. And actually, my youngest is still in college now for architecture at NYIT in Manhattan.
So, do you find that the education of the people become politically bent one direction or the other, depending on how much college or university education they've gotten? Do you see a correlation there?
In my case, I do. Because in my case, those who went to college the most, they're bent to the left. Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, so I mean, it comes back, and I think, is that because of education or because of? I mean, I guess what I'm asking, you always hear that. You hear that non-educated people vote one way, and educated people vote. Well, I guess which is it's an odd thing because some people educate. You don't need schooling necessarily to be educated.
And sometimes your education gets involved, it gets in the way of being, intelligent and what have you.
Well, here's what I think, and please speak to this because I think that is an issue, just from personal experience. That if somebody goes from school, from grade school to high school to college, and then to grad school, and goes on there and then goes out into the world, they're a much different person than if somebody goes to grade school and to high school and then gets a job at McDonald's for a year or something and serves people and then does that other stuff. But I find that kind of year off of working and serving totally gives people a different perspective.
I tend to agree. First of all, I've been working part-time jobs since, before high school, junior high, what have you. And I think working is a good thing. You shouldn't wait till you graduate college. And putting that aside, the idea of having an internship or something, when you're at the college level, whether a gap year or what have you, I think that's also very important to see what the real world is. Because it's one thing, for theory, but when they put it into practice, mommy and daddy aren't going to be there.
Yeah. So and so now that you're running, so what was the impetus? You seem like a very well-rounded person. I guess in the real world, you're or prior to this, you're an accountant.
A CPA. Yeah, historically had nothing to do with politics other than voting. No interest whatsoever. So going back to March 2015, if you can picture that date, That's 1 month before Hillary declared, and about 2 or 3 months before Donald Trump actually declared. So there's really nothing going on. There were people just starting to talk about the next election. Obviously, Hillary was in the news and Trump was in the news, but they hadn't declared yet. But all the garbage, or in terms of the Hillary, and in terms of her emails, in terms of all that stuff, she was basically being put on a pedestal that this is the person we're going to be putting forth as our candidate. And that was before, really before Bernie, also before he got popular. And I think he got out of hand in terms of what they thought he was going to accomplish. And I said, this is ridiculous. Are we as Americans being told? Go on. I'm sorry.
Yeah, but so you said you're not political at all. So you were getting this.
Up until that point.
So at what keyed you off? Like, what about the situation at that point was happening to make you just get, that politics was the answer? Did you see? I mean, there weren't any changes going on in your personal life just because they're
personal life. No, but the country, I just wasn't happy with where the country is going. It was really affecting me that, we're basically being told who we can vote for from like 2 or 3 people from Democrat, or 2, a handful of people as Republicans. When really we have over 300 million Americans. Why can't all 300 million Americans just throw their hat in the ring and, winner take all? I don't get that. Historically, there was a reason, because historically you needed millions of dollars, hundreds of millions of dollars to run for president. Why? You need name recognition. So you had to buy ad, whether it's a radio, whether it was print, newspaper, whatever it was, you needed a lot of money. But now we have this thing called the internet, where Lee and Dan, different states, could sit on a podcast and be broadcast to cities, states, the whole world has access to us for what? Not even a nickel. So why can't we just throw our names in the ring and run for president? If you're going to tell me, because you can only get so many names on a ballot, why can't everything be write-in? I don't understand. We have computers now. Okay? Why can't every name possibly, Mickey Mouse, why can't Mickey Mouse run? And if Mickey Mouse gets the most votes, let Mickey Mouse be president. You're going to tell me, because they can't calculate. Everything's scanned now and computerized. None of these things make sense anymore. But I think the two parties, I really think it's a uniparty, the two parties want to control who is in office and who can run and who can be in office. And they want to put Dan and Lee out of the box. Sorry, you can't run. But I really believe that elections are, what I said before, name recognition. If you can take your message to the public and it resonates with them, and you can get high enough in the polls, why can't you be part of this? To me, it makes no sense other than corruption.
So your candidacy is more, I mean, this is a great message for sales and marketing. How many people, I mean, this technology has been here forever, but you can introduce yourself to your customers like this and nobody will do it. Do you know
how many people will go on social media, but they won't even comment? Forget about showing up in a video and doing a podcast.
Yes.
They won't engage, but they'll just go out there and see what everybody else is doing. But they'll just, I don't get it. What's the downside? The downside is someone's going to hear your opinion and they're not going to like it. Well, but it is. If you don't ask for something, the answer is no. You know that as a salesman.
Yeah.
It's no. I think Wayne Gretzky said, you miss 100% of the shots you don't take.
Lee Newton Rhodes, I am so excited that you're here. Okay. It's as if you're reading my mind. Okay, excellent. So how does one go about, so you just declare I'm running for president? Are there any forms to fill out?
There are forms to fill out with the Federal Election Committee. That I did, and that's basically from a financing standpoint, because once you start taking donations, then you have to file certain forms. But if you don't take donations, technically you don't have to do that. But I did that anyways for all the elections in the past that I ran, just to get my name out there. So if someone says, well, how do we know you're really running for the president? I'll say, well, go on the website there, fec.gov, and see if my name is there. So
I love this.
And also in terms of Facebook and LinkedIn now, LinkedIn also has recently started verifying that you are who you say you are. Because initially people say, you can say who you are, but how do I know you're not a fat boy sitting in a basement over in Thailand?
That's exactly right. Well, we have, she's here to learn from both of us. Okay. I mean, we have people from all over the world, and it's just everyone's just a click away. So okay, so you can run. So you talked about if you did,
I'm going to interrupt you for a second, and I'm doing it for a reason. You
yeah,
just made a comment about everyone over the world have access to this. And I've
yes,
had a lot of people come to me and say, I don't live in America. Why should I connect with you? Why should I interact with you? And I tell them, that's a valid point. But everybody knows other people. You never know who other people know. And everybody has value. And you would be surprised who can make connections to other people. There's one person now I'm very close with who lives in Australia, but his contacts in America are invaluable. The people he knows, the people he put me in contact with.
yes, and it's like that. I guess when you're doing anything, hey, do you? I have too many. I want to keep on going down a different hole. Let me just stay on the presidency thing. You talked about if people like your message, they can vote for you. So in a brief statement, as succinct as you can, what is your message? I mean, I'm going to vote for you just because I like you. I don't know if you'll be on the I'm going to write you in no matter what. Yeah, so it's done. But what is your basic overall message?
I treasure this country. I really believe. I'm not just saying this because we're on the podcast now or other people in here. This is coming from my heart. I really believe America, the way it was intended, is God's gift to humanity, which is why people all over the world dream of coming here. This is heaven on earth. Our freedoms that we have here, the way it was intended. And it pains me. I think the founders would be rolling over in the graves crying, what did you do? I gave it to you, all wrapped up in a bow, and you're tossing it in the garbage. And this is what's been motivating me over the last number of years, just to get out there, tell people who I am, my message, and also, even if they don't support me, just to educate them on the issues of what is America about. America was, we're getting a little political now, we give you a little civics lesson. America was set up with three branches of government. We have the legislative branch. I'm sure you know all this, which is supposed to make the laws.
No, we're talking. Fine, go ahead.
Yeah. You have the executive branch, which is the president, his minions, who are supposed to execute the laws, and then you have the judicial, which are the courts. Why do we have the Congress anymore? We have all these federal agencies like the ATF, the CDC, and the Department of Education making all these laws that you and I have to abide by. Congress never made them law. Why? The whole flavor of America and being we the people is not we the people anymore. We have a 10th Amendment that says, anything that we as states didn't give you, federal government, you guys can't do. Hands off. Yeah. Federal government says, well, F you. We'll do what we want. You want to start another civil war? And whether you believe the Civil War, the North and the South, part of it obviously was over the slavery. But a very big part of it, especially if you speak to Southerners, were over states' rights. Do we have rights or not? We had an agreement. You guys reneged on the agreement. You just ignored it. So we want to leave. In business, that's what you would do. Marriages, that's what you would do. And the federal government says, no, you can't leave, even though we had an agreement.
Yeah. I know. So these civic, are people not being taught this now?
100%. I don't think people are being taught this.
Well, you spoke to your children, and you said you don't relate to your children. Are your children voting for you?
Sorry, I apologize. I obviously I relate to my children.
I didn't mean that. You said you didn't understand.
For example,
yes.
The Second Amendment.
Yes.
People's rights to own weapons, guns. When it was initiated and when it was passed as an amendment, normal citizens had the same weapons as the government. That's not so true anymore. And people had them. Why did you have guns back then? Because it was your right. You had no right to own a car. You had no right to own a baseball bat. But you do have a right to own a weapon. My kids don't relate to weapons because in New York City, no one's allowed to have them unless you're the police or you're well-connected or very wealthy. The average citizen has no right to walk in the streets with weapons. But in a lot of states, why do I need a permit? My permit's the Second Amendment.
Yeah, that's right. They got rid of that here in Georgia. We used to be that we'd have to get a separate license, a carry permit. Now they don't have to do it anymore. And I tell you, to be honest with you, and it was freakish coming from, where I'm coming, coming from New Jersey. I was New York and then New Jersey. You're not allowed to have any
New
guns,
Jersey's horrible.
but uh, every mom that I knew had a 38 in their purse.
All these restrictions on the Second Amendment, they were anti-women, because what weapons do, what guns do, they put women on equal ground with criminals. You take away their right to fight back, the right to protect themselves, especially in their homes at 2 a.m. They're just sitting targets, ducks or whatever. It is so anti-woman.
That's interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way, but it is. There's a point of the. Okay, so there's the Second Amendment. We've been going through some issues with censorship here. The First Amendment.
Where is any of these amendments?
Yes.
Where's in the fine print, except during a pandemic? I don't see it. All these things were taken. We had a lot of these laws taken away during the so-called pandemic. Where was the exception that the Bill of Rights doesn't apply during that time period? I don't see it. I don't know why it's there, and I don't know why our legislators sat on their backsides and let governors and attorney generals and other people do what they should have been doing. No one wanted to take the blame, so they just said, you guys do what you want. It wasn't legal. Election laws were changed unconstitutionally during the pandemic.
So what?
You want to change them? You want to argue, that they should be changed because extenuating circumstance? Fine, but then get the legislator to do that, and they didn't. They just took it on their own.
Okay, and so it seems to be what happens is it happens. It does, a time of crisis. People tend to be willing to give up some of their rights during times of crises.
If you're going to give up your rights during times of crisis, guess what government's going to do? They're going to make more times of crisis. Am I wrong?
Well, I asked the questions. Okay, so now the thing is, so what do you do about it? Like
you
what?
Get people to do their freaking jobs. You get a media out there who doesn't sit there and say, we want access to power, so we're not going to ask the tough questions. We're not going to go down the rabbit holes and see if there's criminal activity, what have you. We'll just, sit there on press conferences and ask them, well, how was your day? Did you have pizza for lunch? What time did you get up? They treat different presidents different ways. And our media is really our big brother, basically representing us, pushing back at government, making them transparent, making them honest. And our media is just not doing their job. Most of the media is not doing that.
Well, so okay, let's say we agree to that. So it's almost like they're a fourth branch.
100% they're a fourth branch.
Which again is not 100%. In the Constitution. So if I'm hearing your message, it's get back to the Constitution.
Yes. Otherwise, why are we better than any other country if we have no Constitution? What is this worth anything? Why did all these veterans lose their lives and be disabled and stuff like that and fight? For what?
So in this time, this is very interesting. So
why now military enrollment is at probably an all-time low.
Yes. So with this awakening, this political awakening that you had in 2020, 2015,
March 15, 2015.
Oh yeah, that was the Trump. Okay, 2015. You've become, as you admittedly so, more vocal.
Much more vocal, much more passionate, and saying, you know what? And also, there's an expression in English that if you always tell the truth, you never have to worry about who you told what to. So, and I feel also, if you always tell what's coming from your heart, you don't have to remember it either. Because it's coming from your heart, and this is what you feel. And I'm not telling one person one thing and somebody else something else. It pains me also. It bothers me when politicians, depending on who they're speaking to, first of all, they change their accent, and second of all, they change their opinions. And I'm not saying, but they change their opinions because something else happened on the outside. Of course, people can change their opinions over life. Of course, we should. As we mature, as we get more information, as we learn, then sometimes yes, our opinions change. But They shouldn't change because it's Tuesday, I'm speaking to this person, and it's Wednesday, I'm speaking to this person. This crowd, because I'm speaking to blacks, wants to hear something, so I'm going to speak about criminal justice in one way, and this I'm speaking to whatever other crowd, I'm going to speak it in a different way. These people, they're hypocrites, and the media doesn't call it out enough on this.
Well, I mean, if they called out hypocrisy to everybody, that's all they would do. But yeah, I agree with you.
This is the best America could do. When it comes to business, we have the best and the brightest people running business. Why do we have, use whatever term you want, running government?
Yeah.
It makes no sense other than corruption.
Yeah, I seem to recall it was like a big thing back in the McCarthy era, which some people might remember. I'm sure you do. But during the McCarthyism, the whole thing, they would, like, the famous statement at the end was, no one believes, have you no shame? Like, that was a statement that they made in Congress. Have you no shame? And it was gut wrenching. It was stomach churning that their honor was that important to them, that saying have you no shame was a direct attack against their character. That seems to have less and less effect on people.
It has no effect on people. I think it was Harry Reid. He lied about this politician. I forgot the guy's name. About not paying his tax. I think of Mitt Romney not paying his tax. And when it came out, there was a blatant lie. His response was, well, he lost, didn't he? In other words, the ends justify the means. Lying's totally acceptable. And whether you like Trump or not, this whole thing with the Russian collusion thing was admittedly false from day one. They made it up. And Adam Schiff, he's not held to account when he said there was clear evidence out there that he just can't release right now, but he's seen it. No, they're not called on anything. And even now that we have video. So this is one thing that Trump was very good about, is bringing the receipts. But nobody cares. There's no embarrassment. There's no regret, nothing when these people are called on for not making mistakes, not disagreeing, but blatant lies. And the media seems to not care.
Okay, well, so going back, so given that you're awakening and you're obviously well educated on the topics of the day, have you, and you become more vocal, have you persuaded people who would otherwise think differently about this?
I'm not sure if persuaded is the right word, but there have been some people like that. You know what? I just didn't know. Because they have, most people, myself included, we have our media channels that we go to. Where do we go for a news feed, what have you? And very few people are open to looking at CNN, Fox, and also a lot of podcasts now that we have, which are very popular, who don't get the mainstream media exposure. But there are people out there, we can go into names if you want, who I listen to,
Sure,
who are already past the point of being canceled. They don't care anymore. To them, this is it. We only get one shot at this stuff. And if you're very religious, regardless of whatever religion you are, and you're very principled, and you don't care about being right, you care about getting it right. And if you're depending on your relationship with God, you just want to be an honest person who calls it the way they see it. And an expression in English, they want to call the balls and strikes the way they see them. And that's not what's happening to the most mainstream. They spin the news. You'll get headlines on an article. And this bothers me a lot. It happened a lot during the pandemic, in terms of, COVID deaths and stuff like that. But when you get to the meat of the article, well, this person, they got hit by a truck. But yeah, they tested positive, but why is that relevant then? They got hit by a truck.
Yes, that whole era, that whole time, that virus time was very disheartening for me.
It might be coming back too. There are places want to bring back some of these mandates, mask mandates. No one wants that anymore. I had this discussion yesterday, the day before, with somebody who really believes masks make a difference. I said, yeah, I have a question for you then. Why aren't you wearing one now? Well, because there's no mandate. Well, so what? I believe gloves help you protect you from cold in the winter. So I wear them when it's 10 degrees below zero. I don't need the CDC to tell me that. If you believe masks help and they're effective from COVID, from the flu, from colds, from anything, Why don't you on your own wear them? No one else is wearing them. Well, so what?
Okay, so I love this, but obviously, so you're self-employed.
Yes, right now I'm self-employed.
Yeah, and what do you do?
Anyone out there want to hire an unemployed past president's candidate? We can talk about that off screen, but go on.
No, listen. We're all about helping people in business. By the way, if anybody needs to contact him, I'll leave that rolling here. Yeah. So you have that self-employment kind of mindset, that kind of entrepreneur bend to you. That I'll wear gloves when it's cold. I'll wear a raincoat when it rains. I'm not going to wear it when it's not raining. And if I'm sick, I'll do what it takes to get better.
This is where my family has a problem with me, because for whatever reason, my body temperature is off. When it's cold there, I'll just go like I am now. Aren't you cold when you go outside? No, I'm not. If I get cold, I'll put it on. I just have a very high tolerance for cold. Other people, 40 degrees, they're out there, in parkas. You would go down to Florida, on winter vacation, and the seniors are out there wearing their parkas when you're going to the beach. It's
right.
It is what it is, and that's fine for them. But we are where we are, and we don't need mommy telling us how to dress in the winter. We don't need the government, some people, that's their mommy, telling them when to wear a mask, when not to wear a mask, how many feet is 6 feet, where did 6 feet come from? And we can talk about that. Did someone just pull that out of thin air? All of a sudden, all these things are gone. All these plastic things they had in Costco, you couldn't be on the same side of the divider with the cashier. Or we can go to these protests outside, depending on what they were, but you couldn't go to funerals and weddings. How does virus know?
So as a patriotic American that you were at this time, what did you do during those times? Did you comply with everything?
I will admit, I'm not a doctor. I'm not an immunologist. I'm not a specialist in this field. So I'll put this out there. I had a hard time believing initially that these people would be blatant liars. Like, what do they have to gain? Why would they do that?
Mm-hmm.
And the more I saw, the same ones who were instituting these policies, not doing them themselves, being caught in restaurants, being caught in beauty parlors, saying, you know what, I take my personal hygiene seriously. This Lori Lightfoot in Chicago. We know once, and you have these other politicians who are, cracking down on quarantining, cracking down on mask mandates. But it's wintertime vacation. Let's go to Florida. And they were out there among other people at restaurants, and they knew Florida did not have the mandates.
Yes.
So once I saw those who were doing these policies weren't keeping them themselves, I said, wait a minute. Maybe there's more to it than we're being told. If my doctor is telling me smoking is bad, but I see him smoking, well, how bad could it really be? Either doctor,
or how good of a doctor, or how good of a doctor is he?
Or how good of a doctor is he? 100%. Yeah. That's a valid point.
That's right. Yeah. So
but something's up when these people aren't doing the same things that they're. We have these climate people, and some of them maybe believe, the waters are rising, but they're still buying, waterfront property. Banks are still giving mortgages on waterfront property with no clause in the bottom that insurance is not going to pay if you get water damage. So
yeah,
I don't know. Or John Kerry says,
and they're getting insurance. And they're getting insurance. Yeah. So the insurance companies, they know everything. Insurance companies, by the way, know everything. They know exactly, because with enough data, they know when you're going to die. They know when you're going to get hurt. They know all this stuff. They wouldn't be giving insurance policies if they thought that the waters would rise. By the way, I did an experiment. I got a cup and I filled it with water and I put ice in it. So the ice went above it like an iceberg, and I left it there. No spillage. It just apparently ice takes up more volume.
Experiment. Most people will tell you as the ice melts, the water will go over, but that's not the case.
No, it doesn't. I did it myself, and I'm like, oh, there's no, that particular claim is probably not right. All right, so this is cool. So you're how do you? So I gather. So your basic instinct, which is, by the way, I have to in full, fully admitting, we're much the same with this. When somebody tells me to do something, my initial response is to push back. I'm not good at taking orders like that just from someone for no reason, what have you. I ask why, or I look into it, but I don't question them, but I don't assume that their motives are pure right off the bat.
We weren't allowed to question. Doctors were not allowed to question.
And then the more they say you're not allowed
to question.
Yeah, and the more they say you're not allowed to question, the more dubious this becomes for me. The less likely I am to comply. And that was my situation as well. So you're in essence running for the presidency of a country whose institutions you don't have as much trust in as you had in the past. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. And in your travels, is that a common thing? Is that something that's
it's becoming more common now? And this is another thing about Trump, whether you like him or not. He exposed, I think, a lot of the corruption in the media, a lot of corruption in government. And whether you think they're
give me an example
or not,
give me an example of something like that you're talking about.
There's a clip going around now, but there's a lot of clips or whatever. When the COVID first hit, the CDC, the WHO, and a lot of other places were saying there's like a 3.4% fatality or death rate or whatever. I forgot how they labeled it. And Trump was saying, I'm not sure what he was basing it on. It was less than 1%. So he was called a liar. He's not a doctor. He's not a scientist. Obviously, he's not stupid, and he has access to a lot of people. But as time went on, these organizations finally admitted that the death rate was really below 1%. You even if you get COVID, 99% of the time, you're going to recover, no problem. And then what they weren't honest about, also the CDC, and finally Rachel Walensky came out with this, the deaths that they were attributing to COVID, 3/4 of them were people who had 4 more comorbidities. Not average healthy people, not teenagers, not 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 40-year-olds, what have you. People with 4 or more comorbidities. And what bothers me tremendous, obviously the age you can't do anything about. And it's unfortunate because there is a correlation between age and outcome if you're going to get coronavirus, the COVID. And I feel for these seniors. And we can go into the nursing home issue, what they did with that later. But obesity is also strongly correlated with how you're going to tolerate this illness. Did you hear them talking about that during the initial? Did you hear them tell people, you know what?
So why do you think that is?
Obesity is going to affect you tremendously. How you deal with this? Maybe you should diet. Maybe you should cut back on the Big Macs and French fries. Maybe you should lose weight. You should do that anyways because heart disease is a killer in America. America as a whole are obese, and we have so many people dying from heart disease that it's preventable. A lot of it, maybe some of it's genetic, because Americans are overweight as a whole. But the government never stops you from eating, and they never told people that go out, get more sun, vitamin D. That really is important to how you're going to tolerate this. Exercise. They closed the gyms, the freaking gyms, and they stopped people swimming out on paddleball. These rowboats and stuff like that. These, what's the name of these things? When you stand up on these paddle boards, whatever it is in the ocean. In California, they arrested that guy. He's all by himself. There's nobody in there.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that. That was
stores stayed open, but the gyms they closed.
So
and the churches they closed.
So why do you think they did that?
I think there's 2 types of gods in this world. There are those of us who believe there's a Father in heaven, and then there are those of us who look at Washington, D.C. for their God. And for their guidance.
Guides. Okay, not gods. Okay, guides. Okay, yeah. So there is a group of people in your mind that wake up in the morning and take orders are guided by somebody, in my case, 1,000 miles
There
away.
are those people as God, family, and country, yes. There are people like that. And there are other people, God's not in the equation. It's the country. And it's not that they don't, and they put the politicians before the country. I love America tremendously. I just don't like our representatives in Washington. I don't think they're patriotic. I don't think they're honest. I think, even when they have hearings, they swear to tell the truth, but they weasel around these answers. And we find out later, like Fauci lied through his. Was he telling the truth when he said masks don't work? Or are you saying the truth, or the truth now? They says you have to wear masks, or do you have to wear 2 masks? When was he telling the truth?
And the truth of the matter is, you didn't have to comply. I mean, if enough people just said, enough with you, and it would, yes.
The government's taking the position now is we never forced anyone to take the vaccine. We never forced. What, you didn't have to comply. You didn't have to do that. No, but then you couldn't go to school. You couldn't eat. You couldn't go to restaurants. You couldn't work. A lot of people were fired.
Yeah, I was actually.
Is that a choice?
I was actually willing to do that. I lost all my contracts and all my business. I was doing stuff in healthcare. I lost it all for that reason. I got kicked out of my office because I wouldn't wear the muzzle, and I lost my lease there with the whole shebang, and we traded. And
tell people like Dan that you had a choice. That there's a word that's used, chutzpah, whatever. The chutzpah. I guess the definition of chutzpah is when you throw yourself in the mercy of the court in front of the judge. But you're being tried for murdering your parents, and say you're an orphan.
Right.
Have a little mercy on me.
Yeah, in Brooklyn, you would be talking about chutzpah. Yeah. There's a lot of Yiddish going on in Brooklyn. Yeah. So you're right. So you're doing that. So but you did. Yeah. I mean, you had kids going. My daughter, when it was the 2020, had that year. So she went to that college. She went to college, and she's like, "Daddy, this is crazy." She goes, "They make you wear this all day long." It was her first year. You're trying to meet people and all that stuff. Anyway, she lasted 2 weeks. So I said, "She goes, I had more freedom at home."
Yeah, I know, but a lot of kids, like I had a son up in upstate in Binghamton. He lost that experience, whatever, a year of college, and it's not the same. You're not learning the same. And the social life is not the same. The networking is not the same. And for those little kids, 2, 3, and 4-year-olds, I think it's child abuse, especially when you can't see the person's face. You're trying to articulate. You're trying to say expressions. And you're going to tell me 2, 3, and 4, and 5, 6, 8, and 8-year-olds are wearing masks properly? They're still wetting their pants, some of these people. They're playing in dirt. For those with the facial hair, masks make a difference? What kind of seal is there? I don't get it. Do you ever see someone wear a mask and then you can still smell other odors, whether it's perfume or body odors? It doesn't stop anything. Someone's smoking and they breathe out through the mask. You can see it just coming out. And these things were worthless at best. And now there's studies saying, it's worse than worthless because the toxicity of some of these masks, you're breathing in things that you shouldn't be breathing in. Some of it because you're exhaling that you're supposed to exhale. Another is these masks are made of materials that you should not be wearing on a full-time basis. For constructions, I understand. So you know what the excuse was? People used to tell me, doctors wear them during surgery. And I said, you know what? That makes sense. Until I started investigating. You know why doctors wear masks during? First of all, doctors, they wash up and they dress up, gloves and gowns and everything. We don't walk around like that. But do you know why doctors wear masks during surgery? Because you have
Tell me why.
There, a body's cut open, wounds are exposed, and the last thing they want to do is sneeze or cough or spit in that open wound. That's why they wear masks. It's not because they're breathing something. They don't put masks on these patients. Did you ever wear masks before during flu season? No, we never did. Because it didn't make any sense.
I cannot believe we haven't talked before. You're like the best guy. You know what I love about you? You said at the beginning, I'm passionate about this country, and I can hear it in your voice. I can
Not
hear
just this country, but the people
freedoms.
Of this country. And whether it's Dan or whether it's people that look like me or don't look like me or don't believe it. First of all, I believe you should always talk with other people, especially people you disagree with, because otherwise you're not going to understand and you're not going to grow. Very rarely, there will be people, very rarely will someone else be 100% wrong. Might be 99%, but not 100%. Most people are not insincere with their beliefs.
I agree. I think this is great. So you are, spreading this message and getting out. Where can people find you?
Well, one place you can find me is on LinkedIn. I do a daily podcast between 11. It's broadcast on LinkedIn and on StreamYard and on YouTube, iHeart, what have you. It's run by a number of people, Mark Lee and some other people. It's called World Economics, 10
How
to
come you
11
didn't
on
tell me
LinkedIn.
about this? I could have made a banner or schmanner or something. World Economics?
And on Mondays, on the same platform, I do at 11 o'clock. And that's hosted by Dave Walker. If you don't know who Dave Walker is, you should know who he is. He's a former U.S. comptroller, a brilliant guy. And he's very involved with a party called No Labels, you may have heard of. Running as a third party, trying to get ballot access in the 50 states. But Dave Walker, he's an amazing guy, source of information, and to me, and also various other people, like yourself. But those are my regulars.
Oh, well, that's awesome. Yeah, so I want to do that. I'll check him out, Dave Walker, and get on that show. What's the name of it again? The
World Edition, 10 to 11 o'clock on LinkedIn. It's on. They're posted on YouTube. It's on iHeart. It's on Amazon. It's on Roku.
All right, make sure we'll get hooked up with that. I think that's dynamite. And just spreading the words. And you see, the thing about you is you don't seem to be bitter about anything either. You say, this is wrong. Let's go ahead and fix it. And this is why. And then you can have conversations.
We're all human. We all make mistakes. And if we don't want to try eventually to get things right, what are we doing?
So
for people who say America has a bad history, yeah, America did things that we should be ashamed of, and sometimes by people who were good people. But we, as a country, we want to grow, and we made tons of progress, whether it's civil rights or whatever. And we can talk about each of them individually. We're doing much better today than we were 100 years ago or 50 years ago. But I don't know that the America that we're going to have in 20 years or 50 years is going to be America that we're proud of. If we're going to do away with, the ability, this is one thing we talked about before about the kids who went to college.
Yes.
This bothers me a lot. Colleges there should be to reinforce and teach kids how to debate, how to have discussions, not to shut people down because they disagree with you. And if you can't express yourself in a college environment without repercussions because of your grade, then what are you doing there?
Yeah, I remember it was a very common phrase growing up. You'd have nice conversations, whatever, and you'd say, okay, well, let's just agree to disagree. And then you move on, past the gravy.
Safe spaces, censorship, ideas. I just don't get it.
Why do you think they came out? They used to not be that. Where did it come from? Was it created or was it just a natural, expand
generation? Parenting. Kids were never told no. They were never told you're wrong. Never told, to think whatever, different ways. And they just have feelings that, wait a minute, if you disagree with me, you're attacking me. Speech is violence. I'm offended, therefore I get to do X, Y, and Z. No, you don't. If you're offended, get over it. No one cares. And there's something I learned, and when we're 20 years old, we walk around caring what other people think of us. When we're 40 years old, we stop caring about what people think of us. And then when we're 60, we realize no one was even thinking of us.
I know. No, I often talk about that too. You have embarrassing moments, and then but try to think of somebody else's embarrassing moment. It's like, they're devastated by. I can't even think. You don't even know what it is.
I have not defined by your worst day either. That's not who you are.
Yeah, I have a theory of why when the world kind of changed, it was a noticeable thing. Remember the milk cartons? Remember they used to missing children? There was the milk carton thing. They don't do that anymore. Obviously, we have the internet. But that first milk carton guy was out of New York, Eton Pates. I don't know if you remember him. Yeah, remember that? Eton, young kid, went to school, never came home. And the world went nuts, and we were trying to find him. It was devastating. What?
As they should have.
Yeah, horrifying. But what happened was, instead, we used to go out and play all the time. All of a sudden, that kind of free play that you with just other kids and handling things with other kids, now everything became organized. Now there's travel sports, and then a grown up would always be there. There's always a grown up managing the kids, for safety, whatever out of good reason. But the kids don't have that there was no people around them to tell them what to do.
Unsupervised, yeah.
And yeah, that's right. I couldn't think of the word. Unsupervised kind of play where
That's how I grew up, right?
Yeah, well, you just get mad, and one kid was a jerk. You know what? Literally, I'm taking my bat and ball, and now you guys fend for yourself. Like, those kind of things had to be worked out without a grown-up involved. And those kids become grown-ups, and they don't realize how to have disputes with each other without, calling somebody to say, hey, they're bad, punish them.
I'm going on a tangent, but I'm doing it for a reason, because this is something very dear to me. You just mentioned Eitan, what's his last name again?
Eitan Pace.
Eitan Pace, whatever, missing kid, whatever. There's a film that came out recently called Sound of Freedom, I believe it's called, with Jim Caviezel and some other people whose names I really should know, but I just don't have it memorized, on human trafficking, specifically dealing with children. And I just don't understand how the media is not playing this film up, whether you like it or not, how, the job that he did. But this issue of children at risk, how can they not tug at your heart?
Yeah, my son, my 24.
This is a documentary on actual things by people who are involved with it. And this should be broadcast all over the place.
My 24-year-old son went to go see that movie and called me on the way home in tears and angry, and just, this is everybody needs to see this whole thing. It was I still haven't seen it, but it went there. We have a famous LinkedIn user. Children are red line. Focus for all of us. Yeah, I mean, it
should be. They're innocent. They don't know better, and to abuse them in these ways that they're doing, it's horrible. Whatever's going on the southern border or in general in some of these countries, what kind of adult? Whether you believe what happened at Epstein's Island, and there's so many examples we can talk about where adults are knowingly taking advantage of children. I'm not talking about slave shops, which is horrible. I'm talking about sexual exploitation and kidnapping.
Well, that is an issue. With sexual exploitation, what seems to happen is in culture. This is the culture change. Is first you see something and you abhor it. Let's just use pornography for a thing. First, you're like, this is crazy. We're not supposed to. And then you kind of like accept it. And all right, well, it's freedom. People can do what they want to do. But then it goes to a next stage. And the next stage is almost celebrating it. Like, it's a right for something. And I think that's where we are with that. That's a devastating issue. It's destroying families and life and kids. And it wouldn't continue if it wasn't so used, so it's like, you got to look in the mirror for a lot of these things. The same thing to fix these problems, the problems in the culture. We can't say it's because, the government is allowing or the government is promoting it. And then in the same breath say, well, to fix it, we have to look to the government to fix it. How do you talk to people and just ask them, dude, you got to look in the mirror?
No, I agree with that. The government should be somehow helping people in terms of promoting policies that are more conducive for productive, society, whether educational system or what have you.
So give me an example. Give me an example of where the government, where do you believe, as a presidential candidate, Lee Newton Rose, where do you believe the government's promotion should end, or what they are responsible for, and where they should step
I thought you were going somewhere else. And let me talk about this first. In terms of the environment, I think the environment is very important. I think people should clean up the trash. They should take care of themselves, what have you. And they shouldn't pollute more than necessary to live a life. Okay, we all have garbage, it has to be thrown out, whatever. But to say that it's not my job to clean up stuff in my front yard, someone else gets paid to do that. Well, you're either part of the problem or part of the solution. It's your choice. These climate activists are saying, well, you have to, restrict, using your gas guzzlers in your cars, and you have to fly commercial, while they, like John Kerry goes private because he's too important to go commercial. Well, either believe it or not. So the government should help us, educate us, but give us the tools to own these problems. And I think most people will, when they believe that the problems, which is why most people believed during the early part of the pandemic that these policies worked. But when they shut down debate, even by experts in the field, we kind of backed away and said, well, maybe they don't work.
Yes.
So this is based on education. That's my policy with life. Is you give people education, and the answer to speech you don't like or you don't approve of or misinformation is good speech or better information. And watch these doctors, if you want to say these people are spreading misinformation, get these people on a stage and make them debate with the people who have these good policies. Tell them why they're wrong. Knock these heads out with these doctors. You had at the beginning of the pandemic over thousands of doctors saying the Great Barrington Declaration. I don't know if you heard about it. Over in Europe, Jay Patriotic, Robert Malone, a lot of doctors say these are stupid policies. They don't work. The vast majority of people are healthy. Let them live their lives. The elderly, the sick, we should protect them as we always should. Grandma, we always should protect these people. But don't shut down schools. Don't shut down jobs. Don't shut down the economy. What are you doing? And then, what did they do? They isolated these doctors. They threatened them with yanking their licenses, funding, which is that's how the government restricts speech. You're going to talk like that, we'll take away your funding. You don't come up with the right results from your experiments, and we'll take away your funding. We'll take away your licenses. Take away your ability to operate as a doctor. And the only doctors who spoke out were those who are already retired, are not in the system.
That's right. And so, by the way, I apologize because of this video. You've lost a vote. Chris Stone is voting for me instead of you.
Do you know why he's voting for you instead of me? Because he realizes you had the good judgment of having me on this show.
That's exactly.
I'll give you a marriage advice. More than once, my wife and got into an argument. My wife said to me, "You have the dumbest judgment of any human I know." I said, "Yeah? Who did you marry?"
That's good living. That's right. I've said that too. But she, said something to me, and I said, "Well, at least, you're an idiot." Well, at least I'm not married to one. That's talking about her job. This is excellent. So you had said, let me talk about your family. So you said you have a family, wife, kids. How many?
I have 7 kids, and I'll just put this out there with you. And this also affected me tremendously, not just as a presidential candidate, but as a father and as a person. My oldest son, unfortunately, 24 years ago, 11 and a half years old, was away at summer camp. I got meningitis and didn't live out the day. And the reason I'm bringing this up, first of all, because you asked about my family.
Yeah.
Because this affected me tremendously in terms of capital punishment. Because I was for it. And there are reasons I still am, but I just can't pull that lever anymore because I think life is so precious. How can we unnecessarily take away another life? But I know there are times where maybe it calls for it. Well, why can't we give life without parole? And this is a discussion we can have. Actually, another reason I bring it up is because there are times where people can change their opinions because things happen in their life, and it can be explained.
I want to finish your family, and then I want to come back to this, if it's okay with you, if it's not too close to you.
Your show. We can go longer if you want, or we can have part 2.
Okay. I think I just want to be friends with you too. All right. So
there's so much we didn't even discuss yet.
I know.
Stuff I wanted to put everything would go on.
Okay. So 7 children. A wife. How long you been married?
42 years now.
Look at that. And you still like each other?
We're on speaking terms, yeah.
Yeah, okay, good.
We still use the same address.
But I think that's a bigger issue than not. I mean, that's something that I look for in someone who's able to manage that. You got a lot of balls in the air with 7 children and a wife. Any pets?
Over time, we had different pets and stuff like that. We had
Yeah,
turtles, we had fish, we had birds. Yeah.
you got the whole shebang.
We had a dog too. Yeah.
And still in speaking terms with all your children.
Yes. Yeah. You know what? As parents, I don't know if you have children or if you don't. We have these visions or dreams, aspirations when we have children. First of all, it's important. Not everyone who wants to have children does have children, and that's very sad. But those of us who do have children, we always wonder, what these kids will be like when they grow up. And they're not always what we thought they would be like, for good or for bad. But I think overriding whether you want your child to be whatever profession or whatever it is, the relationship is the most important thing. Not that you have to condone, their choices in life or agree with them, but you should love them and have that relationship. And sometimes it's very hard, but it's important because they are your kids, and you are their parents.
Very good. Okay, so on that, back to your your change of opinion because of your personal incident. You seem like a principled man.
I try to be.
Yes, and you
the reason I say try is because we're all human. We all make mistakes. We all say, what was I thinking when I did or said certain things, and we all hopefully we internalize these things, try to do better. Sometimes we apologize and sometimes we don't.
Okay. I'll rephrase. You're a loving and principled man. Okay. Character rich man. I got it. And you had an incident which changed your opinion. But in a position,
right.
Yes, but in a position of creating policy that affects everybody, not just not your opinion. How does one, or how do you create policy and enforce policy of something that you might disagree with because of an incident that changed your opinion? Am I making sense with that question?
I'm not sure, but let's piggyback on the capital punishment.
Okay, let's go back to capital punishment. There is a reason. There's a reason for capital punishment that somebody can argue about. Oh, let's do it. Okay, so capital punishment. The reason why actually, let's do this one. Let's do one that we could even more problematic. Let's talk about abortion. Okay.
We can talk about abortion, and please do. I'm interrupting.
Okay, so you want to do the other one? Okay, good.
We're going to go back to abortion. I'm interrupting. Our podcast, our discussion is not scripted, and that's fine, and that's the way it should be. Okay, I'm just acknowledging that. So much of politics, debates, whatever, they're scripted. These people are given questions ahead of time, given answers ahead of time. The press conference is the same thing. Certain people are picked on, certain people are not. You can ask certain things or not, and that bothers me. Like, why are we doing all this stuff if it's all scripted? Now go on. Let's talk about abortion.
Okay, so personally, one can be totally against it. As I am, but if it's the law, if I'm living in a state that is, and it's the law, and you have to enforce it, how does one with conviction and principle and love like you have reconcile that?
I understand. How would that affect me? Let's say I'm living in a state where abortion's legal. Let's say that since you didn't ask, let's say I don't like the idea that it's legal because I'm morally against it.
Yes.
So how does that affect me?
Well, okay. Let's say you're morally opposite. You think that I should have gone back. Let's do the other one because this one's actually too.
Because so far, the answer to whatever you're going to say, so far, the answer is we have a thing called a ballot box. If I don't like the way policies are, we get the politicians that we vote for. We get the policies that we do because we vote for these politicians. So if the politicians are putting policy in place that I don't approve of for or against anything.
I guess the thing, this is my challenge. I think that there's a lot of hypocrisy. There's a lot of hypocrisy that goes on, but there's a lot of hypocrisy that I don't care about. Like, I don't care if somebody in their, I'm Jewish. I don't care if somebody is anti-Semitic. I could find out their whole life, and they, they're part of the, Nazi party or whatever they do, whatever they personally believe. Don't care. Now, I care about the way they act and the policies that they promote. So if someone,
I'm smiling because we are so alike. To me, what's in a person's heart, we never know, and they come with whatever baggage they have, but their actions, that's who they are. And that's how we judge people.
Yeah. So, like, I don't think that hate crimes is a thing. Hate crimes for me is a thought crime. I mean,
I don't understand the logic of that. First of all, you should get because you opened your mouth and you said why you're committing this crime, you get a bigger punishment than the person who was smart enough to keep shut. And what crime is a love crime?
Exactly. Yeah. So I don't. That's what somebody feels or thinks or what makes no effect. So and that's how you'll govern.
That's how I govern.
Judge someone on their
a crime means you hated this person enough to do something you shouldn't have done. If you want to make it double the punishment because of a hate crime, make all the crimes double the punishment.
Yeah.
Because you never know.
And I tell you, I'm going to tell one personal story. I was taking care of my dad for years and years and years. And I probably shouldn't say it in front of her, but for years and years, I was taking care of him. And then he was in our house, and it was, he got beyond me. And so it was a nursing home, and I'm like exhausted. My kids are little. I'm going through everybody does it. Don't feel sorry for me. But in my head, the most terrible thing came. I thought to myself, why can't he just die already? Like, that came into my head. It was like a moral. I was devastated for thinking that. I was thinking that. And I went to seek counseling or whatever. Actually, I wound up at a church for whatever reason. And anyway, so I go see, and the guy said something to me that was so perfect. He says, I don't care, God doesn't care, and nobody cares what you think. All we know is that you're taking care of your dad. Fixed me. I mean, I was fixed, from being devastated. And then when I see these things like hate crimes and these thought type of crimes, I'm like, that's where I'm like, I think that's opposite of the Constitution as far as I'm concerned.
Because you never know what someone's thinking in their heart or why they're thinking it.
Right. So it goes to, so there are people that are, as passionate about the death penalty, thinking I need some closure, or somebody needs closure. They just killed my whole family. I'm left here alone, and this guy's, putzing around in jail.
Does it really give them closure? Did it give people closure after the Holocaust, where Nazis were convicted of crimes and hung? I'm not sure that it did. I'm not saying it wasn't the right thing to do, but I'm not sure that in and of itself gave people closure.
Well,
it doesn't bring anyone back.
No, but if they know that there's a death penalty, does it prevent a future murder?
I'm not sure that it does. And anyone who's sick enough to do whatever crimes, I don't think cares about dying.
Well, then why do they fight for, in the states that allow it, why do they fight for life without parole as opposed to the death penalty?
A lot of this is lawyer things, not the people themselves.
I don't think.
I don't know from a prevention standpoint. I'm not an expert on this.
Yeah.
If someone wants to kill somebody, they're going to kill me versus life without parole. I don't know. They're crazy enough to do the crime. They're going to sit there with a calculator and saying, you know what?
You see, but this is a good. I'm
not going to do it because it's the capital punishment. I can deal with life without parole, and that I'll do the crime for. The other one I won't.
I think. But this is a good example of how we used to just have discussions and conversations. What's your son who passed? What's his name?
I'll spell it for you. It's Tzvi, Tzvi.
Svi?
Yeah, it's Hebrew for the word deer.
Yeah. Okay. Svi, I'm sure he would be very proud of you.
I hope so. Hopefully the other ones are also, and also my wife.
Yeah.
And hopefully this guy Dan is the DJ.
That's it. The DJ. All right. Well, this is awesome. You know what? Stick around. I'm going to end this soon, and then I just want to stick around and talk to you for a second. But for anybody left there watching or does watch this thing, please go check out Lee Newton Rose. Just put it on Google. You'll find him. He's all over the place. Follow him. Watch all the other shows. Do you have any final thing? And then you want to share words of wisdom you can share with the audience here?
I will share one thing. I actually have a couple books here that I wanted to share with you.
Oh,
one of them
okay.
is this from a professor of mine at Georgia State, which had a really big impact on me. I'm an accounting major, but this is a marketing class, and he wrote a book. David Schwartz, The Magic of Thinking Big. If you're going to be thinking anyways, you might as well think big. You might as well shoot for the stars. If you fail, you fail, whatever, you'll be up in the heavens. But if you'd rather shoot for the stars and miss than shoot for the grounds and hit.
Very good.
And there's so many people, as you said before, probably in their hearts always wanted to run for president, but just didn't. Like, why not? They're afraid of other people judging them, other people saying, "Oh, look, you lost, you failed." Everybody fails running for president except for one person. But if you have a message you want to share with people, then it's not about winning it would be nice, but it's not about that. It's what does the public want? What's the best for the country? And what can you add to the conversation? And if this is the way I can add to the conversation is by running for president, and whether people think I'm a fool or not, but it helps educate people and helps moving the country forward, then I'll do it. I'll put myself out there. What are the choices? Just sitting on your hands and saying, you know what, there's nothing I can do. Woe is me. So many people do that. That's not for me.
You're doing God's work, and I'm so appreciative that I got a chance to meet you and do this, and we'll have to do it again. I wish nothing but good things to happen to you all for the rest of your lives.
Yes.
Eat well, live long, and prosper, and we'll see you next time. Take it easy.